Guys, we're going to do a 3116 today, MUI fuel system. Following up on the other video, I'm going to show you how to do the fuel setting. The fuel setting is specific to this engine. Every serial number has a different fuel setting. It's according to the test spec for the engine. So to do the fuel setting, first thing we're going to do is remove number 1 and number 2 rocker arms. You may be able to get by with just removing number 1. But especially for this video, we're going to remove both of them. Remember, with the rocker arms, you want to be careful, again, just like in sync, of the push rods. So if you were doing sync and you wanted to go straight to checking the fuel setting or setting the fuel setting, you could. We're just starting out from scratch on this one. So again, I'm going to take the rocker arms off and then watch my push rods. As we talked about before, you can label these. Some of these you can tell have been labeled before. I'm just going to set them down in the order in which they came off, so they're ready to go back on. Okay, when we go back on, we want to make sure those push rods are in the pocket, both top, bottom, and then we'll do a complete 2 rotations to make sure, by hand, to make sure they're setting in the right place. Once I get those 2 off, first thing I need to do, a little bit of not used, but this is used, a little bit of oil on top of there, make sure. If not, we can get it from an oil can, but this one's good enough. I need to put 2 hold downs on to push those down so that rack moves freely. We're going to go ahead, this 12 or 24 volt system? 24 volt system. It's a 2-wire solenoid, so I need to make sure that I have power to this. I have a battery cart right behind us, right? And we'll just grab one right over here, if you would, and roll it over. Leave it behind you and run the cables up. Now when we put the hold downs on here, 24 guys. When we put the hold downs on here, we want to make sure that I got enough room to get in to my fuel setting, and I do. Sometimes I have to put it on the other side. These are just compressing it again to make sure that my rack will move freely. While we're getting ready to do that, next thing I need to do is I need to get in between my rack and my governor, right? So on these pliers, what I've got is a rounded part there, right? That rounded part in these pliers is rounded and smooth. Very important. So there's a clip on some of these, and remove that clip, but then this has got to release and slide back to get in between there. If I use channel locks and gouge that up, there's an O-ring inside the head that'll get cut in a leak oil. To replace that O-ring, either got to remove the cylinder head or remove the governor to replace that O-ring, right? So somebody said earlier, do you want me to get channel locks? No, definitely not, right? I want to use smooth pliers, right? If you use a regular pair, you can put some tape around them, but they've got to be smooth. I've got some of the older style in there, but these work the best right here. What I'm going to do is clamp down on that, move it back and forth. Sometimes when you're moving it back and forth, you can just push it over. This one happened to do that. You can put a screwdriver in between your pliers and there also if you need to. So I move that over out of the way, get a screwdriver and go in there, and it just slides back into the cylinder head. Push rod, get it out of the way. And now I've got the linkage exposed that goes between the cylinder head and the governor, right? Once I get that exposed, notice I turn on my keys, see the rack move. They've got it set up here, there's 2-wire solenoid, so I have to have power to it or remove the solenoid. Put my pliers back on there. And this one, you've got to make sure that I've got full travel, right? So my pliers to begin with, I want to be able to move it all the way up to where it stops and then all the way to fuel off. Okay, I can't quite get to fuel off, see that? So I need to move my pliers just a little bit. In other words, I need a lot of travel here. almost there. That's stop, that's fuel off. Got me? I gotta be able to travel all the way both ways. Got me? And that rack's nice and free. So I know I'm good there. Now I'm gonna put my fixture on top to measure. Just like I would measure number one when I'm doing sync. One thing that I use as a judgment when I put this in, it could be a lot of different angles. I make sure that this piece right here is parallel to the engine. That helps you to remember, you know, where it's at. Put my dial indicator in there. Some light oil on this sometimes will help just to make sure your dial indicator reads. Moves freely. Okay, see, I still got movement there, right? So I need one of two things. I need a longer tip, or I need to adjust that angle. Probably adjust the angle and get the job done that I need, so I don't have enough travel there. Now I don't have enough out. Okay, I'm still reading the whole way. I'm still touching on both sides. So a little longer tip would do me a little bit better here, but we've got full travel there. So the next part is probably the most difficult to understand. It's very simple to do, but probably most difficult to understand. I'm going to go to turn on my dial indicator. I'm going to go all the way to fuel off, right? Just like normal, all the way to fuel off. I've still got travel. I'm going to zero my dial indicator at fuel off, understand? Check my zero, right? You all agree, correct? Now I need to have 8.62 millimeters is what my fuel setting is. So I need to have more than 8.62 millimeters of travel. I can go all the way up to 9.78. I know I'm off now, I'm forcing it off, right? But I go all up to 9.78, follow me? I get zero, and I go up to 9.78 where I run out. Right? Like I said, a longer tip would be a little bit better, but I've only got so much travel with the dial indicator, so I need to make sure I've got over 8.62. I go all the way up to 9.78, right? And I get zero, correct? With me? Good so far. Okay, so now here's the kicker. I can keep checking my zero. I got zero, right? Okay, here's the kicker. Here's the tough part, right? I need to take this tool. Sometimes they're straight, sometimes they're at an angle, right? I need to take this tool and I put it in the pin that goes in between, and it's kind of hard to see. I put it in the pin that goes in between the linkage that connects the governor to the rack. Understand what I'm saying? Once I put it in between there, this is called a tuning fork. What I'm going to do is take that tuning fork and put it against that pin and the head and push the tuning fork against the governor. That's then my fuel setting. So I push that right down against here, and that's it. This one's at 9.02. I can't move this around now, okay? Especially on an engine that doesn't have a spring in between this linkage and here. You'll break the rack. I've had people break the rack before, try to force it. I don't move this now. That's my setting, right? There is, I'm going to show you, there is a lot of slop. I can kind of make this thing read whatever I want. 916, right? 902, 918, okay? What I want to do is pull that over and check it. So that's why I'm using that tuning fork to pull it and it'll be consistent every time. What do I have? 902? Mm-hmm. So if I go here, I can hold this with my hand, go all the way to 0, right? I let up. I then come down in here. Look at there. What am I at? So people say, I can never get the same number, right? Well, that's exactly how you do it. I pull this over, I'm at 0. I let up, I put this in here. I mean, dead on, right? So this engine's heavy. I need to be within 0.25 according to the book. I want you to be within 0.1, okay? That's what I want you to get to, 0.1. On or heavy, never go light on a fuel setting. If you go heavy, never over 0.25 over. Follow me? But I want you to get within 0.1. So I'm going to take this. I know I need to lighten this up. I'm going to go right in here. Loosen that fuel setting up. 8.62. So I'm going to go out here. Again, we're going to have to do it and recheck it, right? So I take this back out. We go back to 0. I got 0, right? I say I want you within 0.1. I'm supposed to be 8.62. I'm 8.75, right? We'll take a little bit off of it, right? In the real world, you got 0.25. I'd leave this alone, right? I want to be on or heavy, right? They give you 0.25 either way. I want to be on or heavy, but never over 0.25 heavy, right? So we'll give it just a little bit less. I was close. Zero. A little too far, didn't I? All right. Minor adjustments. 0. 8.64. I'm on the top side. I'm within 0.1. Really, really close. I'm actually within 0.02, right? And I'm done. Biggest problem before we end here. Biggest problem. People jerking this thing around once they got that in there. Don't do it, right? You're going to set it's going to be all over the place. Like I said, you got the older style rack, you could break the rack, right? Okay, it's done. I've got that locked down. Everything's finished. I pull the tuning fork out, whatever you want to call that, right? Pull this out. That needs to slide back over. I can slide that back over. I usually come in right on the other side of the O-ring. That snaps into place. Clip goes over the top, right? My vice grips can come off. My dial indicator can come off. And then last, I'm just going to remove these, put the rock arms back on. Any questions?